All right, we're back with Torchwood. Welcome back. I know the intro is a little different. We're back. So I'm just gonna let's just dive right into. We got 3 episodes to talk about before we get to the episode we're actually watching today, which is episode 12. If I sound strange, it's because Torchwood has sucked the life out of me. And it's driving me crazy. So, let's just start. Episode 8 was They Keep Killing Susie. What did you think about that episode?
Well, I remember they reanimated her. And the big thing I remember from it is that she went to where her father was in the hospital and she literally unplugged him.
Yeah.
And then she was trying to take over Gwen's life force, but ultimately Jack ended up shooting her.
Yeah, so the whole thing was Susie had planned... She had basically come up with a plan if Torchwood discovered her and she ended up dying, that eventually, she basically had a sleeper agent that would start going on a rampage. Torchwood would link this back to her and bring her back with the glove, but she planned... I don't know how she planned all of this, but she planned that Gwen would be able to bring her back completely, and the glove would be able to transfer all of Gwen's life energy to her and keep her alive. And it was an interesting... It was an interesting episode. It's probably one of the better ones of this season. And there's a lot of mystery. How is she doing this? What exactly is Susie doing? And I like that. And then at the end, they figure out Gwen is pretty much dead, and Susie is not only alive, but she seems to now be immortal. And they figure out it's the glove, so Tosh shoots the glove, and that severs the connection. And Susie dies, and Gwen comes back to life. But this one, I did enjoy. It was interesting. It was a good mystery and everything. And it kind of delved into a bit of has Gwen replaced Susie at Torchwood? And it's well, kind of, but she has her own role that Susie didn't fill. And, she's... Honestly, the team is probably more connected now than when Susie was alive. But yeah, overall, I thought it was an interesting episode.
Yeah.
After that, we had Random Shoes. What do you think of that one?
Now, this is where the guy thought he found some kind of alien artifact.
Yes.
And he was trying to sell it and got an offer of £5 million for it. But it turns out his own friends were punking him. But he ended up getting hit by a car.
Yeah.
But then he was following everybody around.
Yeah, he had... What they revealed is that he basically swallowed the alien eye. So when he died, his spirit disconnected from his body, and he was basically following Gwen around as she figured out what was going on. This was also interesting. I'd say this was another good episode. It was just kind of weird. I think this one is kind of equated to Love and Monsters in Doctor Who, because it's we're focusing on this guy who we don't know who this guy is, but we're focusing on him and not the main crew, the main characters and stuff. But I don't know. I probably would have I used to say that this was probably better than Love and Monsters. Now that we've actually rewatched it, or I've rewatched it, I do think that one was interesting and funny and stuff. And watching this, it's this was good. It's not bad. It's not great, but it's good. It's interesting. It's an interesting mystery, and it's a completely different vibe from the rest of Torchwood. So overall, I liked it.
Yeah. Now, if I was watching this when it first came out, I mentioned I liked the first couple of episodes. When you get down to it, though, and we're down here to what this is, 9 episodes, 9, 10.
Yeah.
This team, especially Owen, is really not very likable. Tosh seems to have some kind of inferiority complex. Owen is just a turd, you know.
Yeah.
And then Jack, of course, we know a little bit about Jack because of Doctor Who, but if you'd never seen Doctor Who, you wouldn't understand why Jack seems to be the way he is.
Well, yeah.
And then you got this ordinary, young woman who was going to be a police constable, and now she's stuck with the Torchwood people, and she's got a lot of conflicts, including, her boyfriend that she can't tell what she does. So I would suspect that I would watch a couple of more episodes, but if it didn't get any better, I wouldn't have gone past the first season, because they're really just, especially, again, Owen at this point is a very unlikable character.
Yeah. Speaking of, there's also Combat, which was also a very Owen-focused episode. Episode 11, Combat. This may be the worst episode of Torchwood ever, and I didn't think it was originally. Like, I didn't really have any strong feelings. I was like, oh yeah, that's the one where they're like fighting weevils or something like that. Watching this again, now granted, this was another one of those we watched in the evening. It was about 8 o'clock at night. I was exhausted, and we had just watched Random Shoes, so we watched Random Shoes and Combat back to back. And watching Combat, oh my god, it may be the worst episode of Torchwood. And it's funny because, going into this, I was like, well, I remember day one, and a lot of people don't like Cyberwoman. But then watching it again, it's like, well, day one was funny. And then Cyberwoman was interesting. It just kind of had some problems of like, we can't really connect with Yonto too much. But, like those were very interesting. But then we get to this episode, which I made a joke after we watched it that you don't really see too many stories that show the troubles of the rich white man, which this episode did, where the villain of this, who was also, for those of you, I don't know how many of you are going to know this, but there was an anime in the late 90s called Cowboy Bebop. Really, really great anime. A few years ago, Netflix made a live-action adaptation of it, and it was horrendous. And the villain of that episode was the villain of that show, and he was awful. He was just the worst. And he has such a distinct face that I can immediately recognize him anytime he shows up.
Kind of looked like a young Tim Curry on steroids.
Yeah, so I see him here, I'm like, oh my god, it's him. Oh, that's amazing. He sucked in that show. And it's not really bad here. He's doing what, obviously the writing, what he's being directed. It's not really his fault here. But yeah, this episode, which also has a major focus on Owen after losing Diane in Out of Time, which we reacted to in the last video we did, which we already said wasn't a very deep connection that they had. And so now that this, like, he's really like losing himself. He just wants to be alone. He's getting angry. He's getting into pub brawls and stuff like that because he lost Diane. It's just like, boy, I don't buy any of this.
And apparently between about episode 5 or so, when he was having the affair with Gwen, and when we get to this one, we find out that Tosh accidentally said, so is the thing with you and Owen over, because he had this thing with Diane, and Gwen didn't know what was happening with Diane. So
it's like, because Gwen, she said, like, she knew that he had a thing with Diane, she just didn't think it was a thing. I guess she didn't think that he had fallen in love. Like, but then in this episode, because we said last episode, did they break up at some point? And no, they didn't. He just went and banged another woman instead. Which, I mean, he was already with a woman who was cheating on her boyfriend. So I don't know. It's not like that was a morally bad thing that he did with Diane, but he's so hung up on that he's ready. He was ready to give in. He was ready for the Weevil to just take him at the end there. And I'm going to admit, going back through Torchwood again, Owen is just not a good character, like, at all. And I don't know if he gets better. I don't remember if he gets better or not, but it's just that episode was so bad and just did not work. And yeah, and then the whole reveal that it's like, well, the bad guy is like, well, we are people who have this extra money to spare, but we don't have anything going on in our lives. We don't have anything worth doing, and life is meaningless. So we pay to fight a weevil in a cage match. That's what we do with our money. And again, it's like, I have no sympathy for the rich white man that can't do anything with his money. Go to Rome. Go to Japan. Go do something. Buy a video game console. Buy a book. I don't know. You're telling me this is the only use of your money that you... Give it to charity or something.
Yeah, I saw something recently that was talking about one of the great philanthropists of the 19th century and early 20th century, Andrew Carnegie, and how when he passed on, he left libraries and concert halls and did all of this stuff with his money because he had been blessed. He was literally one of the richest men in the world, if not the richest man in the world at that time. And now you got this guy from South Africa who is the richest man in the world and is doing nothing to help people less fortunate than he is.
No, he spent was it million or $1 billion?
$40 billion.
$40 billion on Twitter, and then somehow made it worse, which is a feat, because Twitter was already bad. I know. I'm on it.
And because of what he's been doing in the last 6 to 7 weeks, his Tesla stock is also tanking.
Yeah.
It's really funny. I started seeing this thing on Facebook about how he's really upset that people are calling his automobiles swastikars. So I said, you mean we shouldn't call them swastikars? Every time we say swastikars, his stock prices go down? Swastikars. Yeah. And then somebody else said, oh yeah, but there's some new names. They're now calling them Deplorians and Clanberginis.
Well, yeah. Oh, I remember the whole thing with the Tesla that exploded, and people were like, some of the alt-right on Twitter were trying to show, it's like, well, this is a great ad for Tesla, because if a terrorist tries to blow up, it'll just blow up and the Tesla will be fine. And it's like, that's entirely not what happened. It wasn't even a terrorist, it was just this stupid Tesla truck. It's like this. Anyway, the point is, combat was awful, and I was losing my mind watching this. And honestly, yeah, Owen, not good.
Not a likable character.
I don't remember if he gets better or if they just stop doing this whole thing. It's also hilarious that in a show that has Captain Jack Harkness, like one of the most sexual characters in fiction, that every woman on this show goes for Owen and not Jack Harkness, who, even putting aside everything, John Barrowman's just handsome, but it's just like, or even it's just like, go for Reese. He's a nice guy, like at the beginning of this episode, there was a bit more trouble with that, where actually there was a lot of that in this episode, where like Gwen was dealing with like she was losing Reese. He was leaving. He was basically paying her no mind anymore, and when he was there, he was like yelling at her and stuff, and she's like breaking down from all of this. And the thought that occurred to me is, Gwen's arc during this season is not necessarily bad, but I feel like they tied it too heavily to this affair with Owen. And it's like, it should be about, she is seeing things and it's not good. She is seeing these, extraordinary things from the universe, but it's not like on Doctor Who, where, Martha can see all these things and it's incredible. Gwen is seeing all these things and it's horrible. And just a few months ago, she was a normal, police constable. And I feel like that should be more of the driving force. And, add on to that, she can't tell Reese, or she probably shouldn't tell Reese. And it's just like, all of that could be good, but it's more of, she can't tell Reese about aliens, also she's been banging someone else. And it's just like, you had enough with the aliens, And then just tying that to Owen, who's just not a great character in this season.
Anyway,
all of that.
Deep breath.
I've been waiting all week to get that off my chest, to say how awful that episode was. We're moving on. Moving on. It's the 2-part finale. We're watching this episode. Next week we'll be watching the actual final episode of the season. And I will just go ahead and say it is a 2-parter, but from what I remember, they still kind of have their own individual stories. So, other than that, I don't fully remember everything that happens in this. As usual, I don't remember everything that happened in Torchwood for some reason. But, yeah, you got anything else?
I got nothing.
Then, let's stop blabbering and, well, start blabbering about this episode.
では後ほど。はい。It's my
Vote Saxon.
grandfather's 88th birthday today.
I thought you'd gone to all this trouble for me.
88 is a joyous year for the Japanese.
Do call again.
I would love to.
Look like
Peter Cushing.
no, but that'd be interesting.
Has it been stolen?
No? We have.
There's no voting for Saxon in 1941. Get up, you bum.
People are staring at us.
We need to try to blend in.
It's easy for you to say. You're the Asian here.
Don't worry. You're with the captain.
Just walk around like you own the
I've got
place.
Sash's files, all her reports. December 24th. That's when Diane flew through the rift. I had to let her go.
Yes, we see this.
What's George dancing with the Jack?
She's Korean, isn't she?
88 is a joyous year for the Japanese.
No, she said she was Japanese.
Oh.
It shows how much we're paying attention. You know, out of all the team, Tasha's like the worst to take back in time. She's so panicky.
I'm Captain. You go first. I'm Captain Jack Harkness, 133rd Squadron.
Look this way, please.
Owen. Look. There.
One more for the record.
Polaroid?
I
Eh.
insist.
It's polarish.
Not used to writing with these things.
Don't press so hard.
I love fountain pens.
You're not in full uniform, Captain.
On leave. 48 hours.
That's an interesting camera.
It takes photographs instantly.
I didn't know they could do that yet.
And I didn't know they made an attaché case out of metal.
Touche.
I've had a good look around, but most of the doors were locked.
Can I help you?
Ah.
I'm the caretaker.
So whose side are you on? What's in the bag?
Nothing.
If you've got nothing to hide, then open the bag.
She can't. Her work is top secret. She's a decoder for the Brits.
Without ladies like her, we'd have no way of defending the country. To Tashiko.
Ashiko.
Tashiko.
Good job, Jack. And Jack.
To a fellow captain.
To a fellow chiseled
So what brings you
jawline.
down here?
Owen, where are you?
I'm in the building. Where's Billis's It's at the far end of the corridor.
I'll keep looking out here.
Well, he made it there in record time.
Yep.
Thing is, you could be the last girl I ever kiss.
Good moves. That worked. Yeah. 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 Ah, my hands hurt now. You know, I'm sure it does, but does that actually work? Like listening and hearing where to...
You can actually hear it if you're very, very close to it and there's no other sound.
Go to her. Go to your woman and lose yourself in her.
Maybe I should.
Yeah.
It still won't work. There's a piece missing.
Billy's had it all along.
We still don't have all the equations.
Maybe the machine can work it out.
Owen!
You don't know the advancements in AI we've had. It'll work. Nope. Not that one.
Get out of my way!
Ugh. The two of you were not really trained, were you?
Who were you?
A con man. That's why I took his name. Falsified his records, so it seemed he was still alive.
How did you end up in Torchwood?
Someone saved my life.
You're just a T-boy.
I'm much more than that. Jack needs me.
In your dreams, Yanto. You sad my dreams when you were his part-time shag, maybe. That rift took my lover. And look, Captain.
Well, good job.
Yeah, 1941, that would not have gone over well.
There's a lot of good heavensing going on right now.
Jack!
So let's get out of here.
Jack, we need to get out!
Good luck with that.
Jack, you have to... We need you.
I have to go.
My people need me.
I knew we did the right thing. Opening the rift.
Still no sign of Billis.
I'm not apologizing.
He would have been so proud that you took his name. Because here you are, saving the world. To Captain Jack.
It's Captain Jack.
The first thing you learn.
Yeah. That's it. Well, it is a two-part finale.
Obviously.
They got to deal with Billis now, so. But that was a good episode of Torchwood.
Yeah.
Unlike Combat, so.
Now, again, the possibilities of Gwen finding that can seem astronomical.
Oh, yeah.
It struck me, I mean, it was a good plan. I mean, after all, Doc Brown wrote Marty a letter at the end of Back to the Future 2, saying, deliver this to 1955 at the exact time. So it seems like, I thought that's where they were going, is that she was going to figure out a place specifically to leave it so that they would know where to find it. So just searching around this entire gigantic Jack Hall, going down into the basement, looking at one thing, go, oh, look, there's a can, this has got to be it. That makes no sense.
Oh, I mean, it was counting on Gwen or Owen or Yanto searching that place up and down until no stone unturned until they found that. But I mean, they were also kind of prepared, like, if they don't find it and they can't open the rift, they will be stuck there, and Jack is just gonna have to take care of Tosh until she eventually would pass on.
All right, but again, given the circumstances, can put the can somewhere where it should obviously not be. And that way, when they're looking at going, hey, wait a minute, what the hell is this coffee can or whatever it was, doing up in the stained glass window, so that it would make sense for them to go and look for it. But to find an empty can in a basement, that's too normal for me. I know. We're talking about a rift in time, and I'm saying that a coffee can seems too unusual.
Yeah, with the immortal Captain Jack Harkness, original name unknown. So
now, we knew he was a con man from Doctor Who.
Yes.
But somebody, and it wasn't the Doctor, somebody before Doctor Who picked him up and let him, because he was in the time space machine, whatever he was doing.
Yeah, he was part of, I think, the Time Agency, or at least he was kind of part of the Time Agency. I guess because he said he was a con man. I don't know if he was officially part of the Time Agency or not, but presumably then, when we first meet him, he's in World War II, so presumably he had only just recently taken the name Captain Jack Harkness to blend in, because we see him with the I guess the higher ranks in the military there, so he had probably been there for 6 months, maybe a year, under the name Jack Harkness by the time we meet him in The Empty Child. So, before that, we still don't know much about him. He gave a little bit, like, he enlisted in some army, basically, when he was a kid, him and his friend, and he got captured, and his friend was tortured instead of him. And, but that's like the little that we know about Jack himself.
Yeah.
So
now it would make sense, since he appears to be in his early 40s. He might be a little bit younger, but if the only big war, of course, is 1914 to 1918, so he might have been in the American forces 1917 to 1918 in that war. Now, I'm sure there were other regional smaller wars between, but that's the only one that the Americans would have fought in.
Yeah,
because I don't think he would have been in the Spanish Civil War.
But that's the thing, is because we don't know. He is human, but presumably he is still from the future. So he is from one of the, when we see, like, wow, humans have made it out into the future, like we see that a lot on Doctor Who. Presumably he was from there, joined the Time Agents, or stole one of their time machines, basically, one of their vortex manipulators, I think they call it. And thus he went back to... Because that was the thing, is he went back to, 1941, because he was playing a con, because he needed to get that ambulance with the nanogenes, the nanomachines and everything. He was going to sell that for a con. It was a whole thing. But because of that, he needed to spend some time in 1941, so he took the name Jack Harkness, because he just thought, well, that guy died, I can fudge the records and I can become him, basically. So, it's certainly a thing that they were not thinking about when they wrote the first episode with him in Series 1. This is definitely stuff that they're thinking of now that they've given him his own show. So, but now we have the story not only of Captain Jack Harkness, but Captain Jack Harkness, the other chiseled jawline that's now in this show. He does, like, honestly, like, if you put a helmet on him, like, that goes over his eyes, he could be Captain America. I could see it, honestly. So, but yeah, it's interesting, especially with this episode, because it's like, in theory, like, on paper, not a lot actually happens in this episode. It's Jack and Tosh are at a party in the 40s and are there until they are not there anymore. Like, it's not actually as much action as, like, previous episodes have been, but I don't know, something about it I think works really well. So I will say, though, again, the fact that we're still on this now, the Owen and Diane subplot, it just does not work. Now, we have not seen, I don't think we've seen the comments yet for Out of Time. Have I posted that yet? I don't
think so.
No. I just edited that this week at time of recording this. So we have not seen the comments. I will be curious to see, especially because that was the episode that the people demanded we react to. So I will be very curious how that reaction is received. But I'm very curious what people think of the whole Owen and Diane subplot, because I just don't think it worked well enough.
Yeah.
You know, especially because it was one episode. This has now basically taken over Owen's character completely, but just also adding on top of that the fact that it's like Owen was not that compelling to begin with. So tacking on this subplot, it's like, I don't know if I don't know. And that being the conflict between him and Yanto and everything, I don't know. I don't know if it fully works. So I will say, too, because it's like, I understand, he's desperate not only to get back Diane, but he is desperate to get back Jack and Tosh, because he doesn't want to lose more people to the Rift. But it is kind of a strange thing, because it's like, well, obviously he's very emotional. But if you take a step out of that for a moment and you think, well, Billis had the missing piece to this, to the manipulator, and it's like, okay, that means Billis has been inside of Torchwood, which is that's an accomplishment for anything, Like, most of the villains in this season, when they want to get into Torchwood, they had to convince one of them to accidentally bring them in. Like, this dude just came in and took that piece by himself. Like, that should give you some alarm bells as to what's happening. But I don't know. It's Owen going back, like, because the first time around I was like, wow, this guy, he kind of sucks, but he's also kind of interesting. Going back through it again, Owen is not as good a character as I remember.
Yeah.
So, but then again, I guarantee if we went back and watched my reaction, I had a favorable view of combat when I first watched it, and it is so much worse now. So,
well, we got we're dealing with a lot of toxic masculinity now in the United States. So,
it's
before. I mean, you had the Fight Club movie with the Brad Pitt, and they were kind of glamorizing it then, but now when you see it take over politics, it's not glamorous, it's not funny, it's very frightening.
That is one thing, and I know I'm talking about I'm going to talk about it again, but I do want to briefly mention Vinland Saga again, and it's hilarious because every time I mention it is always apparent that only I have watched Vinland Saga. I keep mentioning it and I keep not showing it to you, but that entire show, I feel like it basically deals with the topic of toxic masculinity by looking at probably the most toxic men of all time, the Vikings. It doesn't get much more... There's not much more toxic masculinity than the Vikings themselves. So, and I feel like that show like really delves into that. Yeah. So, but go watch that. I'll show it to him at some point. I will try because it's such a good show. But anyway, but yeah, Owen is definitely a character you probably could not do today unless you did make him the villain or he went on a crazy redemption arc, which I'm pretty positive did not happen in this show. So
Now, there was one thing, the fact that he brought up Yanto's girlfriend, Lisa. Said, you did all of this for her, why can't I do this for my girlfriend? The difference is, that was Yanto's girlfriend before he came to Torchwood. She was a victim of the Cybermen.
Yeah.
Whereas Owen meets a girl for a week and then loses her.
There's also the difference of being transformed by the Cybermen and your girlfriend left. Like, Diane left of her own accord. Yeah. And so it is a bit of a difference. It's the problem of, you can't let go versus, like, Yanto, yes, that is definitely an issue. That was definitely an issue that was in that episode. And, because they even was like, oh, well, I had to let Lisa go. And it's like, yeah, that's because Jack shot her like 5,000 times. Like, you kind of had to let her go at that point. But the difference here is that it's, it's not that, the rift took Diane away. It's like, well, she flew away. She could have flown to Cambodia. She flew through time and space, don't know where, but it's essentially the same thing, Yeah. So, I don't know. Owen, he's not a bad character, but he's definitely worse than I remember him being, so.
Very few redeeming qualities.
Yeah. But, and of course we're saying all of this stuff, the main, probably the biggest thing from this episode in particular is Captain Jack. The actual Captain Jack. And it's interesting. Watching it again, it is one of those things of like, I don't know. I don't know if they were trying to make a point or just show this is the guy that Jack got his name from. Because it's like, okay, he ended up dying, and they make a big point of this. They put all the sort of emotional emphasis on that, Jack basically telling him, you're going to die the next day, and in the least subtle ways that he could have, and the actual Jack processing all of these emotions and stuff. But then it's like, well, go to your woman, lose yourself in her, enjoy the night while you can. And then that's when they, basically pull the rug out from under us. And it's like, well, he doesn't want to do that. When he says, we've made it 20 times worse because now she thinks she's in love with me. And it's like, but it's not because, well, he's just maybe not interested or whatever. I mean, he's not interested, but he's not interested for a completely different reason that Jack didn't even think about. So, and it's interesting. I remember that being a bit more important to the story, and it is a big moment at the end. They have the dance, they kiss in front of everybody, good heavensing all over the place, and this this crazy thing, in 1941, that's terrible, to in their minds, and it's like, well, what is, we could think, what is this going to do to Captain Jack? Except what we know is it will probably ostracize him for all of 12 hours, and then he will burn in a plane. So it's kind of a thing of like, well, we don't have to deal with the consequences of that. Let's get out of here. So,
now, when we saw The Empty Child, Jack seemed to be very much enamored of Rose.
Yeah.
So, and I don't recall anything so far this season in Torchwood that would lead you to believe that he was bisexual or interested in
He
men.
did, there was a moment when they were like, he was like going off to fight, basically, try to barricade them from the gas mask people, that he kissed Rose, and then he kissed the doctor, and then he went off. Oh. And he said, like, when they had to, like, get past one of the lieutenants or something, and Rose was like, I could go deal with him, and Jack's like, no, I'll go. You're not his type. Yeah. And then he goes. So they've kept that kind of open.
All right.
And there was, I will say, like, what episode was, I think it was They Keep Killing Susie. At the end, they mentioned the whole, Yanto has the line of, there's plenty of things you can do with a stopwatch, and and they reference it here too, that it's like, essentially Jack and Yanto have kind of started hooking up between episodes, which is interesting. I remember that. What I don't remember is how the fact that really came out of nowhere. Yanto is also a character that is not utilized enough in this season. Like, we haven't seen much from him since Torchwood murdered his tragic girlfriend and everything, and that was such a big episode that it's like, and now 4 episodes later, now he's hooking up with Jack, and it's like, okay, something happened off screen, I think, or maybe not. I don't know.
Who knows?
Maybe nothing happened off screen. They just decided that they were going to do that with Yanto. It's not the best written thing. I think because there's, unlike Doctor Who, where it's like stuff will carry over with going through a season. You've got stuff with like Martha's mother at the moment, and the whole the build up of this Harold Saxon guy and stuff, and Martha's relationship with the Doctor. But here it almost feels like there's more. While they are individual episodes with individual stories, it's more. There's more carrying through from episode to episode to episode. Probably because they are just kind of normal people in a normal, life position, basically. So, I don't know. It's one of those things, like, I'm seeing much more of the flaws of the writing in this season. So yeah. And even, like the whole thing with Jack, it's like, it is also a thing of like, okay, I understand that actual Jack, he understands that this is probably his last night, and instead of going with a woman, he wants to spend that time with a man. I will say, if we thought that the Owen and Diane stuff was fast, this was literally like 2 hours that the two Jacks had known each other.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's lazy writing or if that's just the charm of John Barrowman, that he is just so handsome that he did that unintentionally. Like, there are times when he will go through and he will intentionally seduce someone. He did that unintentionally in the 40s.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Still a good episode. Better than a number of the episodes from this season.
Yeah.
But I'm older now. I'm 7 years older. I'm seeing the flaws now. So, anywho, this does lead into the final episode of the season, which we'll be watching next week. The final episode called End of Days. Always a good, fun time to have. Because, they still got to deal with this whole Billis thing.
We're in the end game now.
That's also another thing. I almost feel like maybe Billis should have been more utilized this season. Like, he should have been teased a little bit more, because he just comes out of nowhere, and it's like, well, he gave the anonymous tip to go to go to this dance hall, and it's all in service of opening the rift, and he got into Torchwood, and so this is like, you're putting a lot on. This is the villain now, and it's like, okay, I wasn't really ready for that, but anywho, with all of that, and that was a lot being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. It's probably good that I said who we are this time, because I definitely did not say that at the beginning of the video. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around any of those. There's a playlist with all of our Torchwood reactions, as well as another playlist for every Doctor Who reaction that's on the channel. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.